I appreciate everybody being here on short notice. Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Friday afternoon in the midst of Pac-12 Media Day. Unlike the other conferences, one day for the Pac-12. I think that speaks to, and has in past years, spoken to the level of attention and popularity given to the conference, Pac-12 Media Day for 12 teams. But a number of grenades launched by Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff himself that I believe need some attention here. So this should be a great show with all of your contributions. We will take your comments in just a second. And of course, I will go to the live chat to take your comments in addition to your live calls right here at the Voice of College Football. I will leave the link in the comments section here in just a second. So this should be a great discussion. So bring as many people in here as possibly that you can find out there on social media, or text people. Bring them in here for the conversation on the Pac-12 and the Big 12 in particular. Of course, the Big 10 should be, I would think, a target of Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 as well. But he more was targeting the Big 12 because of current conditions and current territorial battles being waged out there. Let's get right to it here. So again, Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff met with the media today. It's Pac-12 Media Day in, I believe, Las Vegas. They typically hold this in Los Angeles or Las Vegas, sometimes in the San Francisco area. I don't exactly know where they are this year. That's irrelevant. They're in Los Angeles. Okay, there we go. In Los Angeles. Okay. He gave his opening remarks and then took questions. And from there, that's where we got some real weighty comments. For one of the few times in collegiate athletics or in the sports world in general, we didn't get anything inappropriate. We didn't get anything classless. We didn't get anything dirty or underhanded in any such way, but he was, for the most part, classy and blunt, but blunt in regards to what the college football landscape looks like right now. And when I say the college football landscape, it's driven by football. It affects all athletics and all athletes. First question that came at George Kliavkoff was, do you believe that the Big Ten and the SEC, with Kevin Warren and Greg Sankey as their commissioners, will allow the Pac-12 or the Pac-10 at that point access to the college football playoff and a fair revenue share following 2026? I thought that that was a tremendous question and a reasonable question, certainly a relevant question. Kliavkoff would not answer the question because he said, basically, why would not our league be considered full entry into the college football playoff? Why has anything changed? Well, lots changed. First of all, your teams are not necessarily that considered for the playoff anyway. It's been since 2016 since the Pac-12 was represented in the playoff. So that's 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. 5 consecutive playoffs, no Pac-12. Only 2 Pac-12 teams in the 8-year history of the playoff have reached the playoff. So first and foremost, he needs to consider, and I'm sure he's well aware of it, the Pac-12 is lightly considered with USC and UCLA. So lightly considered anyway. Now compare the Pac-12, Pac-10, 2026 and beyond, minus USC and UCLA. And why they targeted 2026 is that's when the TV rights run out versus when USC and UCLA leave the Pac-12 in 2024. So 2 more seasons with USC and UCLA. And then they move to the Big Ten in 24. In 26, the media rights are up. Compare the current minus USC and UCLA Pac-12, Pac-10 to the football playing status of the American Conference prior to the move of Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and UCF. Stack up the American Conference in its prime over the past 8 seasons during the playoff against the Pac-12, minus USC and UCLA. That's a reasonable and relevant question. Kliavkoff brushed it off. He doesn't want to lower the perception of the league anymore. So I understand why he responded the way he did, to basically say, why would we be a target? Why in any way would they exclude us? Because you're not good enough to participate in the playoff. So once the TV contract runs out and they have a fresh slate to start a new playoff, let's say a 12 or 16 team playoff, you are going to be treated like the American Conference circa 2020, with the inclusion of UCF, BYU, Houston, and Cincinnati. I would argue, and I would have to do a deep dive and measure all the teams against each other, but I would, off the top of my head, favor the American Conference circa now in the previous 5 or 6 seasons over the Pac-12, minus USC and UCLA, because that's what we're dealing with. Point number 2. He was asked if the Big 12 is open for business. And he was asked about the commitment of the current 10 teams left in the Pac-12. And that is a difficult spot to be in. Consider this. 1 year ago, Oklahoma and Texas opted to leave for the SEC. And there was much conjecture about who would leave the Big 12. Well, the Big 12 was able to counter that by adding 4 solid, decent, top 25 to 40 programs in the country to stabilize the Big 12. But had they not, they were in jeopardy of getting picked apart. As I have discussed here and analyzed, and this is simply my opinion, but it's shared by Tony Altimore that we have on a regular basis. Tony does great research and consultation work, that the Big 12 has actually protected itself, or is just inherently protected by being mediocre. The Big 10 and the SEC don't want the remaining Big 12 teams. Therefore, their league has been protected to a certain extent and can probably transition into the new playoff era with less seats at the table, but still a seat, at least one seat, conference championship seat at the table of a 12 or 16 team playoff. When he was asked about the Big 12 being open for business, which the question was served up and intended for it to be phrased as the Big 12 is open for shopping at the Pac-12. George Kliavkoff flipped that around amusingly, and it gained a few laughs to say, hey, yeah, if the Big 12 is open for business, we may do some shopping. We'll have to decide whether we're going to go over there and do some shopping. Flipped it around to basically say, we should be the pursuers. We should be the hunters, not the hunted. And we should hunt them down because in a number of ways, reading between the lines and interpreting what he had to say, he was trying to swing the narrative that the Pac-12 is still the better conference, the superior conference to the Big 12. And therefore, the Big 12 teams and schools, programs should be looking at the Pac-12 for safety and not the other way around. Well, we know it's the other way around because, as I just mentioned, the Pac-12, in comparison to the Big 12, from a football standpoint, in jeopardy. The Pac-12, of course, unlike and more so than any other conference in the Power Five, de-emphasizes football in its rhetoric and accentuates all the other sports because it is the Conference of Champions. Seems arrogant, seems haughty. It's the truth. They can go with that. They have more legitimacy in making that claim, staking that claim, Conference of Champions, because they have more national championships athletically out of that conference than any other conference by far because of Olympic sports than the SEC, going with the mantra that it just means more. That is vague and nondescript and nonspecific and really means nothing. So the Pac-12 at least has confirmation on its national championships and its status there, and it leans on that, but it's not helping it in terms of football, and football drives everything. He was asked if the Pac-12 was going to merge with the Mountain West, and he discarded that and said, no, we are not merging with the Mountain West. Well, semantics there. There is not going to be a merge, we would think, between the Pac-12 and the Mountain West. But will the Pac-12 pick off from the Mountain West? And most notably, I would think, as I've stated on here and posted videos, that the two primary targets out of the Mountain West for the Pac-12 would be San Diego State, strong football program. Shoot, San Diego State regularly beats Pac-12 teams, beat the Pac-12 champion last year, Utah, and then also has one of the top 20 to 25 television markets that would supplant or replace. It would not replace in effect, but it would replace some portion of the USC-UCLA void in Southern California. San Diego State could plant a flag with the Pac-12 in Southern California. So San Diego State would be my number one target if I was the Pac-12. And then Fresno State, strong football program, supports the football program, and also would bring along the Fresno, San Jose, and San Francisco areas. Again, those being NFL cities, that's the primary focus. That's 90-some% of it, but still, large population you can draw from that. And Kliavkov mentioned that market size and market value, media value, was the number one objective and criteria for expansion of the Pac-12. So that's San Diego, and that's the San Francisco Bay Area. Athletics and the athletics value of that program in all sports was number two. Number three was academics and culture. And then number four was, and he was very proud of this, and maybe it's legit, we don't know, them taking into account the effect of the student athlete, not bringing, that can be interpreted, not bringing a school in from across the country just for the sake of money. The term was brought out a number of times, collegial. Collegial meaning everyone should cooperate, work together, trust each other, and respect each other's territory, and basically say, we are our entity, we respect your entity. There is not going to be any type of plagiarism. There's not going to be any theft, but that's all been broken down and discarded and ruined a long time ago. But how do you even trust the school presidents in the room when you bring the entire Pac-10 together now, just like the Big 12 last summer? You know that everyone's on the fence between determining loyalty to our current league or doing what's best for us and taking the offer and applying elsewhere. Oregon and Washington have reportedly applied to the Big 10. So when George Kliavkov talks about trust within the room and wanting to stabilize the league, and even though USC and UCLA have basically betrayed us, he didn't use those terms, but left the league after 100 years, that we are pulling together and we are pulling our resources and talents and skills and abilities to maintain and stabilize our league. Not necessarily. Not everybody's in on that. Washington State certainly wants that. Oregon State definitely wants that. Yes, Colorado, maybe they're off to the Big 12. But some of those schools definitely want to stay in the Pac-12 and want the Pac-12 to be what it was. But some of those schools are thinking, okay, well, if you can stabilize it and pull off a miracle, yes. But otherwise, we're off to the Big 10. And some of those may be off to the Big 12. This one was somewhat humorous. The comment was made that the absence of USC and UCLA will actually bolster recruiting for other Pac-12 schools in Southern California. Now, I've got to admit that the response was pretty honest. The projection was that recruiting will benefit it at the other 10 Pac-12 schools without USC and UCLA in Southern California. In all the other sports, especially the Olympic sports, as you can imagine, all the other sports where the Pac-12 is still strong, recruiting in Southern California will increase, you would think, for Stanford, Cal, Arizona, Arizona State. If you're looking for a softball player, baseball player, yes, you go to Southern California now and you can pluck all sorts of really good baseball, softball players, swimmers, track and field athletes that want to stay in the region, want to stay at home, and they'll go to Arizona, Arizona State, Stanford, Cal. Absolutely. For those sports, yes, I can see that point being valid. Not for football. No, it's killing you. Those superior athletes most likely aren't going to go to a damaged, hurt, diminished, possibly dying conference. The great athletes in football are going elsewhere. Maybe they'll want to go to USC and UCLA and play in the Big Ten. They are not going elsewhere in the Pac-12. There will be some players at a certain level, let's get down to the 3-star level, that will stay in the Pac-12 and go to another school. Yes. So if you're talking about 3 stars, mid to low 3 stars, yes, the other schools in the Pac-12 will benefit from USC and UCLA's absence. There is a huge separation when talking about the entire athletic landscape versus the football landscape. So George Kliavkov accentuated the national championships in other sports and said it is remarkable what we are able to accomplish because we have the lowest revenue. We have the lowest total and TV revenue, and we produce the most national championships. That is pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, almost no one cares. Almost no one cares about your national championships. They care about football. Football makes money because it's popular, because people care about football. People want to watch football. Your other national championships are nice. They look good. The awards are shiny. They're big. They're sparkly. They're impressive. And there is a market for college baseball, college softball. Absolutely, there is. We see it most notably throughout the spring on the various ESPN and Fox networks. Yes, but there's a tiny, tiny portion of the population watching those sports. You're not making money on those sports. So you need football to maintain the leadership in the other sports. You need the football revenue. So that's not going to last for a long time. Now, it may take a long, long time for that to diminish because there's just so many great athletes in that part of the country for those other sports. But there will be an impact. Okay. The clincher of a comment, and then I will take your calls. Kliavkov said, been spending the last 4 weeks defending against grenades being lobbed from every corner of the Big 12 to try to destabilize our conference. I understand why they're doing it. When you compare their relative media value to our conference. So at first he's basically saying, yeah, they're coming after us. And I'm getting tired of it. For the last 4 weeks, I have defended our conference against all attacks from the Big 12. The second part of the statement is, again, him trying to raise the Pac-12 to a level superior to the Big 12 using media rights and media values and market values. I'm not, without doing a deep dive or an exhaustive list, I'm not getting that point. I think he just wants to make the point and hope that people believe him. But in the Pac-12, you have the Seattle market. And as I've stated many times, anytime I throw out as a benefit to a college conference owning an NFL market, I think that's compromised. Most of the sports fans in Seattle care about the Seahawks, not the Washington Huskies. But that is a number of people. That's a large number of people, yes. And many of them are Washington Husky fans, but it pales in comparison to the Seattle Seahawks fan popularity in Seattle. But take that into consideration. In the Pac-12, you've got Seattle, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, Denver, again, big NFL city. That needs to be compromised, and that perspective based on the NFL presence there. Phoenix, Arizona, how many of those people are Cardinals fans and only Cardinals fans versus Arizona State? Again, most of those large markets in the Pac-12 are compromised by NFL connections. Big 12, Dallas with TCU, Houston, NFL city as well. You've got Orlando, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Oklahoma City. A couple other quick notes before we take your calls here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Please hit the like button. Shop Amazon. Use the link that we provide in the description section. It helps us build the channel. Doesn't cost you a penny. Same shopping experience. That he is still, George Kliavkov is still recognizing the importance of the Southern California geographic region. Maybe possibly playing neutral site games there. He was asked if Pac-12 people should not be rooting for LA teams or if he would not be rooting for USC and UCLA the next 2 years. He completely said, hey, they are Pac-12 athletes. Until they leave, they are Pac-12 athletes, full members of the Pac-12. Of course, we're rooting for them. You shouldn't be. And actually, the interviewer, the media member asking that question, basically said, I wouldn't, made kind of a funny statement to say, I wouldn't root for them. You need to send them off in their worst possible way. There was a question as to whether USC and UCLA could possibly come back. And he cited that there are students, alumni, faculty, fans pulling together for some sort of initiative. But he admitted most likely that's not going to happen, but that the Pac-12 would welcome USC and UCLA back. Of course, not going to happen. All right, let's take your calls right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here. And thank you for listening to my long spiel on what I just heard. We will get the link to you right now. Please check out the live chat. That's where you can join the show by grabbing the link I have just posted. And I welcome all of your calls here at the Voice of College Football. I believe in the next few days, I'm going to try to attempt to dive into more realignment talk. We had a tremendous run of realignment and expansion videos about a month ago. And there's more to explore there, more legitimate topics. I'm not talking about clickbait. There are more legitimate topics to explore there in expansion, and we will do that. LBC Trojan, USC's not going back. that died when Larry Scott authorized equal revenue sharing back in 2011. Got Lord Raiden, Cal Stanford are all the Big Ten want out of the Pac-12. I would agree with that. So my thought process there, and I've sized it up in a number of videos. Hopefully you guys check those out. A lot of people did. Thank you so much for the views of 15 to 35,000 on those videos. But please check out what I've had to say, because nothing has changed in regards to my evaluation of the value of the Pac-12 programs. I think the Big 12 should roll out the red carpet for Washington and Oregon before the Big Ten grabs them and makes that ultimate decision. Go after, if you're the Big 12, Washington and Oregon. Then the next two pair, Utah and Colorado. Obviously, the emphasis on Utah, and then Arizona, Arizona State. And this is just not it's mostly a football perspective that I'm taking there, but it's all athletics, it's media market, it's also academics as well in looking at that. But if I'm the Big Ten, I want Notre Dame and Stanford first and foremost. All right, let's get to it. We got Kenny on the line here at the Voice of College Football. Kenny, how you doing?
All right. How about yourself there, Mark? Can you hear me?
I got you now. I had to turn up the volume. How's it going, Kenny?
Oh, pretty good, man. Enjoying all the air going around about college realignment and everything. You know, it's just crazy.
It is crazy. And what are your latest thoughts?
I see Oregon, Washington, Stanford, possibly Utah going to the Big Ten. I see AU, AZ, Colorado, and possibly a Cal coming to Big 12. So Big 12 can have a footprint in California to where they can have with the Big 10 with the Rose Bowl.
All right. So you're going with the Arizona schools going to the Big 10?
No, Big 12.
Okay. I thought you said the Big 10. Okay. Yeah. Again, if I was the Big 12, I would have jumped on this a long time ago as soon as this all started to shake up with USC and UCLA going after Oregon and Washington. They would have been my first two targets as the Big 12. And then I would have gone down to Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State. I don't think there's a lot of distinction there, but I would have favored Utah and Colorado. And for the Big 10, I'm going Notre Dame and Stanford first and foremost on this side of the country.
Right. But I think that Big 10 is going to want that Seattle and Oregon market, though. Before the SEC gets it.
Yeah. Well, one thing, though, why haven't they made that move yet? Because Oregon and Washington have clearly made it known that they want to join the Big 10. They have applied for status in the Big 10.
They are waiting for partners to go with them, possibly.
I don't know why they would wait for partners to go with them, but you may be right. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I just don't understand that kind of strategy. What I'm thinking is that the Big 10 has said, hang on, we'll get back to you. We're reviewing the situation, because that has something to do with Notre Dame.
Well, yesterday, the Big Ten's commissioner come out and said that they were going to target teams that's going to be more valuable and more credible and stay close to their academy, their academics.
Yes.
So that's why I think that they're going to try and go after Washington. Maybe not Oregon, but Washington, because Washington's near the top in the academics and stuff.
So wait a minute, you're distinguishing Washington over Oregon based on academics?
Pretty much. I mean, if it's the Big 10 culture,
it is.
They fit in, so the AAU, they fit into that mold really great, like a glove. And Washington and Oregon both has come out and said that they would not come to Big 12. So,
yeah, that might be. They may rue the day that they made that statement. I haven't heard that statement. Did their actual presidents come out and make that statement?
No, it's just been blasted all over the media.
Okay. Well, that's the media is wrong every day. So I don't know that Oregon and Washington would come out, and that's why I reserve judgment. That's why I reserve stating this is going to happen and that's going to happen, because I don't know. Now I lay out scenarios that are reasonable or likely, but I never say anything's going to happen or this is happening because shoot, Oklahoma and Texas decided to join the SEC. They applied, they worked on it for 6 months and nobody knew about it. So all these smart media people that have contacts, not that they're not smart people, but they don't know what's going on for sure. They're just taking calculated guesses.
Just like I've learned this year. One day you can say something, the next day it's totally different. It changes on the fly. You don't know from 1 minute to the next what's going to happen with this, but that's why it's so hard to predict.
Absolutely. Well, Kenny, we appreciate you being here. Thanks so much for the call.
All right. Thank you.
Good day. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, we'll take another call. We got Matt on the line. Matt, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. What's on your mind?
Well, it's crazy days, huh? College football. I'm going to throw out something to you. It's going to sound totally crazy.
Okay.
Right?
We're up for it.
Okay. I know it's not going to happen, but Colorado neighbors Nebraska and not far from Iowa. Could you see Colorado going? I'm not a Colorado fan. I'm just like, just my little devious mind thinking, wouldn't it be funny if Colorado ended up in the Big Ten? I mean, because that would, and then add Washington, Oregon, and Notre Dame. And then it's easier to make the, like you talked about, the pods, because you have a pod like Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, out west, those 4 schools, etc.
Like you say, and like the previous caller said, I don't want to discount anything because I may look like a fool a week later. But I don't know that Colorado. So I think it's pretty clear to look at the Big Ten's blueprint. The Big Ten's blueprint is either to counter what the SEC is doing, which they did with USC and UCLA, and there were other reasons, of course. But now that the SEC is not, at least that we know of, in the market for doing anything, the Big Ten, I believe, is going to add based on value. So that member needs to add value to the TV contract. They need to add value on the field. They need to add value academically. And I don't know that Colorado reaches any of those criteria other than bringing the Denver TV market that mostly cares about the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. What about the ACC schools? How likely is it for them to get out of that TV contract? I mean, that's locked in as what, 2036? I mean, is ESPN going to let them out? Is there anything that can be done to help them to leave and join?
Oh, I wouldn't be concerned with the TV contracts as much as I would with the grant of rights issue and the $100 million. I forget what the number is that they would owe, something like that. But when the ACC is distributing in the low $30 million range, $30 to $35 million per team each year, in the Big Ten, with the addition of USC and UCLA, is going to be in the $105 million range. You know, there's enough money being thrown around to buy out any kind of issues that they need. And this is another point where I hear conflicting reports from what you would think to be credible people about this land of rights, that it is just locked in, it's immovable, there's no way to get out of it, just a needle through a haystack type of deal, versus no, enough money can buy you out, you can get out of it.
What about a market like I'm just having a little fun with my crazy thoughts.
Yeah, with who?
What my crazy thoughts.
Yeah, but what team did you throw out there?
Well, Boston College.
Oh.
Then you bring the Boston market. I know they don't bring a lot
Yeah, nobody.
in sports, but
Yeah, nobody in Boston cares about Boston
I like-
College. Very
I
few
think-
people.
I think actually Georgia Tech would be
Yes,
giving a southern footprint for the Big Ten,
absolutely.
and maybe one of the Florida schools.
So I posted a video with the Big Ten looking at the ACC, and I think I put Georgia Tech third.
Yeah, I saw that video.
Miami and Florida State would give great recruiting ground to the Big Ten to plant their flag down there. But Georgia Tech, it's a tremendous school. It's in Atlanta, which produces as many NFL players as any metro area in the country. And it's a sleeping giant. It's got a rich football history, and it's been good recently in football. We get stuck too much in the here and now, and Georgia Tech's awful right this second. It has been for a couple of years, but it's not been that long since Georgia Tech was going to ACC championship games.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good ad, and either one of those Florida schools or maybe in North Carolina. So
great academic school as well.
Yeah, so it's just kind of fun sitting back watching all this. I've been a college football fan for about 50 plus years, and it's like I never seeing how quickly things are changing is just a past.
And who do you root for?
Nebraska.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of those Nebraska fans old enough to remember the 90s, when nobody wanted to play Nebraska.
I do too.
And now it's kind of like, well, I just hope they don't embarrass themselves. It's really sad.
Well, you've got an interesting season on your hands.
Yeah. Well, I think what's going to come down to is the locker room and how the transfer portal players, the NIL players, how does that gel together with the rest of the team? If they can gel together as a team, they're going to have a really good year, I think.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal rankings are accurate in rating Nebraska to have brought in the best haul of any team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, when you have that JUCO transfer running back Anthony Grant, who was JUCO Player of the Year. I mean, they've added some really good talent, but can they gel? I think that's what it's going to come down to. And they don't have murderer's row schedule like they did last year.
No, you replace Ohio State and Michigan State with Indiana and Rutgers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Kool-Aid was invented in Nebraska. This is true. It's true. It's true. Factual truth. Kool-Aid was invented in Nebraska. So at this time of year, it's okay for Nebraska fans to drink the Kool-Aid because it was invented here.
Yeah, you've had to for 10 or 15 years.
I know.
Especially the last 5.
Yeah. Well, and also the Riley years. So
yes.
Yeah, when they fired Bo Pelini to bring in Mike Riley, I had to Google his name because I never heard of him.
You're not an NFL fan then?
No. Well, he only coached at San Diego for a few years?
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had to Google his name. I saw he's barely a 500 coach, 50% winning percentage. So I was like, why? It's just because he had that nice guy persona. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yes, that's the obvious classic example of hiring in response to what you just had, meaning Bo Pelini's like the Grinch, but swinging way to the other end of the spectrum in response.
Yeah, he was the anti-Pelini.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That did not win 9 games a year.
No. And yeah, so we'll see what happens.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right, let's keep it working here at the Voice of College Football. When you join the live chat and you're back in the back room waiting to come on, if you could just leave your name and either who you root for or where you're from, so we can put up John from Columbus or John, Ohio State fan, whatever the case might be, that would be great. Would love to get that up on the banner. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, it's Eddie from SoCal.
Eddie, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, I think.
Did you say SoCal?
Yeah, SoCal.
Okay.
Yeah,
So what do you think about all this?
I think the Pac-10 and Pac-12 turned its back on USC during the Reggie Bush era, or post-Reggie Bush era, and really wanted to push them down, and were able to do that. Reveled in the mediocrity of the Helton regime. Um, often said they didn't need USC to be good for the Pac-12 to be successful, so they got what they wanted, and they'll probably end up being a G5 plus. I mean, the Big 12 is also a G5 plus. Um, I don't think either league is going to really be a player, in the future. But we'll see. I think what people don't like. You were mentioning the Conference of Champions. The Pac-12 has 540 national championships, but I think USC and UCLA represent like 230, 240 of those. Stanford represents like another 120, 130. So once you get rid of the two LA schools, the Big Ten becomes the Conference of Champions overnight, because they actually go over 500, and the Pac-12 drops down below 300. So we'll see. Probably have to change their
Good point.
mind.
And then, of course, Eddie will have the debate, and many people will, as to who owns those conference or those national championships, because they were won in one conference, but the school now belongs to another conference.
Right. Yeah. I don't think they're going to be hanging USC banners at the Pac-10 offices in 2025.
For sure. Anything else, Eddie?
No, get ready. I was watching the Auburn game, the West Virginia game, the Ohio State games. When USC is on, it doesn't matter if you're from the Midwest, it doesn't matter if you're from the South, you get railroaded, you get trucked. And people think that West Coast football is soft, but the best high school football programs in the country come from the West Coast. The best high school football players come from the West Coast. West Coast football is like the innovation of the sport. All the innovation of the sport came from the West Coast, and the best skilled players come out here. And you talk about toughness. Go walk outside of USC, take a walk at night, and tell me if that's a tough area or not.
Sure. So you make some great points there. I'm not going to completely buy it to the extent that you're pushing it. I think you make valid points that are true, but recent recruiting rankings are telling us that California is dropping. So it's still phenomenal, but it's dropping, and it's dropped considerably below Texas and Florida in regards to producing 5- and 4-star athletes, and even now behind at Georgia.
But you're actually seeing the opposite happen, where top-end talent from Georgia, top-end talent from Texas are going to California, because in high school in California, you can get paid for your name, image, and likeness, and you can't be paid in those schools. So you're seeing the best defensive lineman in the 2024 class out of Georgia go to California. You're seeing the best running back in the country from Texas leave and going to California, because you can make money as a sophomore in high school on your name, image, likeness. And one thing California knows how to do, it's market.
Good points. Well, thanks, Eddie. Appreciate you dropping by. Have a good day. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I want to remind everyone that we've got an Amazon link. You shop on Amazon, admit it. Half of America does every month. That's crazy. Place is worth $1.6 trillion. Maybe you can knock them down to $1.5 trillion and send the rest to the Voice of College Football. So when you shop Amazon, use the link that we provide. We get a couple bucks here and there, or maybe a few cents, depending. All right. Next up here, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, what's up? It's Ballard. How you doing?
Ballard. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I am doing great. What's
so?
On today?
Yeah, man. I wanted to talk about the Pac-12. With all this expansion talk, I think a team that probably, and this might surprise you, but I want to get your thoughts. A team that they could add to probably help the brand a little more, who has had some recent success with 10-win seasons, is Utah State.
Oh, to the Pac-12. Yes.
Yes.
To the Pac-12. So Utah State's another version of Boise State. Probably
That's
a lesser
true.
version. Obviously, they haven't succeeded long. And you know that your boys at Alabama are playing Utah State in week 1.
Right.
And they're coming off a nice bowl win against the Pac-12 team in Oregon State and a surprise 11-win season. However, and they've been good under Matt Wells in the past, but there's really no big following media market. It's kind of like Boise State. Boise State is kind of the super mega Utah State. Boise State's arguably the best group of 5 program of the last 20 or 25 years, but there's not a whole lot of interest there. Number one, their academics aren't great. But more than that, there's no media market that's going to draw in eyeballs. And I would say the same thing with Utah State, that most people in the state, I would guess, are watching Utah football.
Yeah, I never really think much about the media market before I suggest teams that go. Like, I look at stuff like their overall record or recency and everything, which I guess does play a big factor into it. But then again, you do make a good point because they want to make money with the TV market and they want to put the teams in the conferences that people are going to want to watch on a regular basis.
Sure. Absolutely. Do you have any other wild cards out there?
Not really. The only one I could think of was probably a team like Utah State to the Pac-12.
Very good. Still got your deal going on at Ballard Sports Media?
Yep, still putting together team previews throughout the off season, going by conference. We're in the Big 12 now, and we'll be looking to start up the college football season very soon and watching all the games.
Absolutely. All right, folks, get on over there. Give it a look there. Ballard Sports Media. Appreciate you, Ballard.
Thanks, Mark. Always.
Have a good day. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got Sooner Chris on the line.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Chris.
This is so cool that I can actually call in. Thanks for putting that link up.
You bet.
So what I want to talk to you about was the college football playoffs.
Yep.
I've got my ideas for it.
Yep.
So I think you expand it to 12 because if you're not in the top 12, you really don't deserve in. I've heard 12 and 16, but I think 12's right. If you can't get in the top 12, you really don't need to be in that. And the way I would do it was if you're the higher ranked team, you get a home game for the first round.
Okay.
So after the first round, you're down to 6. Those 6 start in the big stadiums like college football playoffs is right now. Because, you know, with all these conferences getting bigger, it shouldn't be that just get rid of the conference championships. You get another home game, and you get a lot more money because the college playoffs will be worth so much more.
Okay. Do you mind if I stop you right here?
What?
Do you mind if I stop you right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I see a few flaws here, possibly. Number one, you're going to stop the conference championship games, okay? How are you going to determine who won the conference?
Well, it'll be just at the end, I guess.
The team with the best record wins the conference?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great, except for these conferences are getting so big that there are going to be multiple teams with the same record that did not play each other.
Okay, well, they figure that out then. If they keep it.
Well, that's why you're giving your proposal sooner, Chris, for you to tell us how you would do it. And that's a major snag because you're going to have ties for conference championships if you have no conference championship game. Well, okay, so that's just number one to think about. Think about that. Just think about that. Also, so you're not giving any buys. You're playing a first round game with all 12 teams and you're going to get it down to 6.
Well, yeah, because after the first round,
the
first group of teams, it's 6.
Yeah. What do you do with those 6?
Then you start playing them at the big stadiums, just like the
Okay.
college playoffs are now.
Okay. I'm not too concerned where they're playing right now. I'm concerned with 6 teams. How do you do a playoff with 6 teams?
Well, the first round is 12 teams.
Sure. Down to 6. And then what's the next round look like?
Well, it'd be what, 6, 4, and 2.
6, 4, and 2. No. The math goes 6, 3, and you're lost then. You're stuck.
right. Yeah, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
You have to
there.
have buys. If you have 12 teams, you have to have buys. If you have 6, you have to have buys. If you have 12, you have to have buys. If you have 8 or 16, you can just play.
Yeah, well, it's clearly difficult to figure out what they're going to do, but they've got to do something with it because all
Well,
these huge.
it's not that difficult.
Okay.
It's not. Takes a little organization, a little structure, but we've certainly thrown out a lot of proposals that would work. So it's not difficult. But I don't like 12 teams because I think that the proposal that was unveiled last summer was a really good proposal, and I liked all of it. If it has to be 12 teams, I liked it, but I don't like 12 teams for this reason. I don't like buys. This is the reason I don't like buys. In the NFL, buys work because everybody plays everyone, and therefore your record can be fairly evaluated. So if the Pittsburgh Steelers go 14-3 as the division winner, their record is legit over the Kansas City Chiefs being 10-7 as a division winner. So you get a bye because they're all playing the same teams. However, in major college football, who's going to determine whose record is better than somebody else's record? I've just worked through each season, and to determine who would get the buys is just a nightmare because it's not fair. It can't be done fairly. And then secondly, the teams that get the buys have such an unfair advantage over everybody else. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I agree. There should be no buys at all.
Okay.
So
then
that's
you
why
need
there's
8
6
or
games.
16.
6 games for the first round for the semifinals. And the rest go to the finals. The winners keep staying. The others go home.
So what's your new proposal? 8 or 16?
Well, it was 12.
You
So
have to have
12 would be-
buys.
Well, it'd be 6 games.
You just said you don't want buys.
6 games, no buys. Just the top 12 at the end of the season.
You have to have buys if you have 12 teams.
Well, I guess I don't understand why you'd have to have a bye, but
Well, listen, Chris. You got 12 teams.
yeah,
If they all play, they're playing 6 games. There's going to be 6 winners to those games.
yeah,
So what happens with those 6 winners? They play each other, right?
yeah.
3 games. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Then you got 3 winners. What do you do with 3 teams? How do they play? You have to have buys if you have 12 teams.
Yeah, I see your math.
Okay.
But somewhere along those lines is what I think has to happen. Somebody can do all the math better than me, probably. But if you have 12 people in the big, if you had all these teams to the Big 12, even with OU and Texas leaving, you can't just have a conference championship. There's too many teams in there, and there's other good teams, and they should have a chance at the national championship. I think it has to grow.
Your bottom
Whoever
line,
does the math
basically,
figures that out.
Sooner, Chris, when it comes right down to it, you just want to expand the playoff, and you think that there are teams that did not win conference championships that should be given the opportunity to play for the national championship, but basically you have no idea how it should be done. That's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the call.
Well, I love talking to you. I mean,
Stop by
talking
anytime.
now, but you're definitely the voice of college football, and I listen to you a lot on YouTube. because you have great ideas. I love all the talk about the NIL that you've been saying, because I agree that it should get to a point where the colleges just play every player, pay them all, the $25,000 a year, whatever it was. Were you the one that said that?
No, that was not me.
Oh, well, I listen to a lot of stuff.
All right, Chris, have a nice day. I appreciate you stopping by. Call back soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. I got to admit, I didn't even hear the last thing out of his mouth. I just heard $25,000 proposal, and I knew that didn't come from me. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, my name is Olu from London.
Oh, yes, sir. How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, I've been a college football fan only kind of recently, so 2014.
Nice.
I went out to Kansas to study, and then from there, I know Kansas aren't very good, but I was over there studying, and I started really getting into it. Followed a guy, Marcus Mariota was the big name when I was there, and just did some back history and went from there. So yeah, just stumbled across your channel.
Very cool. Well, we appreciate you being here all the way from London. Nice. So
All
you're
right.
a Kansas football fan?
Yeah, Kansas football fan, Kansas basketball fan. Don't worry, we're coming back. Leopold he's gonna take us to the mountaintop. Just give us a few years.
Well, I'm guessing you've done a little research, even though you've only been on board since 2014, to know that it's not been that long ago that Kansas had a really good football team.
Yes, the Mike Mangino years. Yeah, okay. I did my back research in Orange Bowl and all of that. So I was there. I do know.
So it can be done.
It can. But so my thoughts on what you guys have been talking about today. It's a real shame, in my opinion, all of this conference realignment right now, and like two conferences trying to take all of the money and basically freeze the other conferences and the other colleges out. I think it's a real shame. But if it is going to be done, I do think the Big Ten and the SEC should then just have their own conference championship, and they should just play each other. And everybody else, let's not call it national championship anymore. Let's just call it Big Ten versus SEC, the Big 12, the Pac-10 or whatever is left of the Pac-10, and the other schools, then they'll have their own conference championships. And we kind of just go back to the way it was before, where you didn't really you had sort of disputed national champions, and like, I think we should just head back to that way, because at the moment, teams are just going to be frozen out.
So you would like everybody to be playing what's called major college football, but you don't want a national championship game or a playoff?
No.
So at the end of the season, each conference will play its conference championship game, then we're done? Effectively.
Because right now, it's the same teams we get in the finals anyway. When has there been a big shock since this playoff has come along? When has there been a big shock where a team no one expected to be there has got there, that wasn't a favorite from day one?
You're absolutely right.
But to me, the best games are the conference championship games, in my opinion.
You don't think that fans and even the players themselves and the powers that be want to see those teams that have shown to be the best in their conference play each other to determine the national champion?
So I would probably refine it to say, maybe let's take a step back. And I know a lot of people complained about the bowl system when it was in place, but let's maybe just take away the national championship element and just have major bowls again, and leave it at that. That way we still have the best teams playing the best at the end of the season. Because right now, once you take away the playoff, the bowls are starting to lose relevance as well.
Well, the bowls are losing relevance because there's a playoff and all the attention goes
what do you think?
Playoff.
Yeah. So if we just strip it back, let's say one layer, potentially two, and have the major bowls get their relevance back again, strip back the national championship, and we go from there. When we have debates on, well, we thought we were really good this year, we thought we were really good this year, it brings the energy back to the sport. Right now, college football it's not like, I feel like it's not gaining new fans. It's retaining the ones it has, but I don't think it's going to gain much new fans.
Well, that might be a good point that you're making right there. It's arguably the second most popular sport in the country. That's arguable. The NBA is right there as well. But so you are speaking from a point of perspective that you've been watching since 2014. So where are you getting this perspective that back in the, let's say, 70s and 80s and 90s, that it was more interesting, intriguing, and that this debate at the end of the season was more relevant or more fun?
I know. I hear what you're saying. I'm more thinking it of from the time I've been watching it. So I came in and I think it was like the first year of the playoff, and I was like, oh, this is a really great idea. Something that, you know, they finally got to a way to decide that a national champion, and it looks like it's fair. But since I've seen it from then up until now, I've seen the same teams playing the same teams year in, year out. I've seen the other games that I've heard used to be very, very important. Let's say like an Orange Bowl. Let's say like I've heard they were the number one games, and regionally, people used to get behind them, used to support those teams. Now I'm hearing that players are opting out. Players don't want to play that game. They're trying to save themselves for the draft. So I feel because of the national championship, it's sort of killed not killed, but it's lessened the importance of all the other games. And we get the same teams in the national championship anyway.
Okay, so you're right in the way the sport has gone, but that should not be the fault of those particular programs or teams. And I know you're not blaming them.
I'm not.
But
correct.
It's kind of the, I don't want to call it the American way, but maybe it is the American way to determine. People want to know who the best is. So you want to go back. I'll throw out a year. It's 1985, and all the conference champions go to their respective bowl games and they play bowl games. And then back before the internet, when I was, 15 years old, and all these bowl games were played on New Year's Day, we didn't even know, really. We had a guess, but we didn't know for sure when we went to bed that night who the national champion was. We had to wait till the newspaper came the next day, and we would look at the AP poll, and it would tell us, oh, Miami's the national champion. Okay. A bunch of AP voters said that Miami is 11-1, and they're better than Auburn 11-1, and Texas 11-1, and Nebraska 12-1, and they should be the national champion. Okay.
Question for you then: in that time, did that start debates, and did that bring intrigue to the sport? Oh, I don't think Miami was better. I thought Auburn was better. Exactly.
Oh, and now in that debate, Olu, not to cut you off, that debate, of course, would be exponentially more now because of social media. And
wouldn't that drive eyes to the sport? Next season, let's go and watch Miami and see if they were the real deal.
And frustration.
Hey, there's no joy without a bit of frustration. But yeah, no, those are also last thing I'd just like to add. What happened to college basketball? Why is that just not relevant in this debate about like conference realignment? Because I've heard nothing about what basketball schools bring to the table. Because
it doesn't make nearly as much money.
It's it. No matter about the alma or the boosters or, TV ratings, it's just a pure money argument. It just doesn't bring the money that it needs.
It makes money, and during the NCAA tournament makes a nice chunk of money, but that goes to the NCAA. So it number one doesn't make nearly as much money. I don't know what the ratios are. Our buddy Tony Altamore has provided us with all sorts of graphs and charts, so we may be able to bring him on and grab those numbers. But it's I don't even want to conjecture. 10%, 15% of what football brings in. And then even its highest value, which is 1 month, March, that goes to the NCAA. Now, I don't know if that can be corrected or what the politics are involved there. So, it's all just about money.
Okay. I mean, it's a shame. We had a similar issue back here when they tried to start the Super League for the English Premier League, and it was all money grabbing, but the fans stopped it. So, fans, if you don't want this corporate realignment to take place, you got to vote with your money, you vote your pockets, vote with your viewers, and you could potentially push it to where you want it to go. But that's not
Olu, to give you some perspective, if you take one of these so-called meaningless bowl games, there are more people that watch that bowl game than watch the biggest regular season college basketball games.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Well, I appreciate the call.
Thank you very much, man. Keep the good work up. You're reporting very well.
Thank you, Olu. Appreciate that.
Right.
Have a good day.
Cheers. You too.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, this is Zach from Arizona.
Zach, how are you?
Pretty good, Mark. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's
That's
up?
good, that's good. So I don't know. I think it's unlikely, but I think I see the ACC expanding to
Okay.
16 teams,
All right.
and I see them picking up West Virginia and a wildcard team, Rutgers. I can see both of them going, just because I see them bringing back the Big East rivalries with Boston College, Syracuse, and Pittsburgh.
Okay. I like the way you're thinking in terms of geography and rivalries and history, but how does that work monetarily? Rutgers doesn't want to leave the Big Ten and make 1/3 of the money that it's making now.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's kind of like a wild card team for Rutgers to leave because, getting UCLA and get UCLA and USC joining. But I can see West Virginia leaving just because of the expansion against Cincinnati and how people see the Big 12 now as kind of like a lesser Power 5. And West Virginia joining a conference as Clemson, Miami, playing better competition week in and week out.
Yes, you make a good point there. However, the counterpoint would be that the Big 12, at least to me, appears to be much more stable than the ACC because it doesn't have the marquee brands that the ACC does that may get picked off.
Yeah. Haven't thought about that, but that was like my ACC expansion because I know they've been talking about we want to expand, but they didn't say where they want to expand to. And I thought maybe West Virginia would be one of those team members. I know when conference alignment first started, they were kind of in the ACC talks at ACC, but that didn't go through. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, ACC or West Virginia to the ACC would be a nice, again, from a football and athletic standpoint. They've got a great rivalry with Pitt, Virginia Tech, and geographically it makes sense. Rutgers, though, is not leaving the Big Ten. The Big Ten would kick Rutgers out before Rutgers would leave the Big Ten.
Yeah. I'm I don't know. I could see Rutgers joining the ACC later down the road again if the Big Ten does kick them out, but I don't know. I don't think the Big Ten will want to get rid of the New Jersey, New York market just so they can have another team.
Yes, and that's why they were added. I think that's a faulty strategy or approach because if you look at New York City sports fans, first of all, college football is down the list. Number two, those college football fans are typically Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State fans, Syracuse fans. They're not Rutgers fans. Rutgers, our buddy Tony Altimore showed us a list he distributed the fan base of each major American city and TV market. And in New York, Rutgers is, I don't know, 7th, 8th, something like that.
But also, I was looking at ACC because for Rutgers again, maybe the ACC wants to get a foot base in recruiting in the New York market. I know Syracuse is there, but I don't think Syracuse has the big recruiting footprint like Rutgers does in New Jersey and New York.
Yeah, that is a true statement. That's a true statement that New Jersey football is solid. But that wouldn't be enough for the ACC to go after a university just because they've got a decent football playing state that probably still isn't as good as Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and a ton of other states that the ACC is already living in.
Yeah. So my question is, who do you think the ACC will get if they had to expand to like 16 teams? Like, let's say West Virginia is one of them. Who do you think like the 16th team would be?
If I were the ACC, yes, West Virginia would be my target. Now, before all this craziness happened last summer, I told the ACC that they should go get Central Florida. I thought that that would be a great find for the ACC. But now, the way things stand now, if they could pluck away Cincinnati or UCF away from the Big 12, that's the direction that they should go.
Yeah, I know the ACC is starting to look at like the Midwest, you know, Notre Dame joining for non-sports and Louisville being a full member. I think Cincinnati could be a top one. I don't know, maybe
Well, if
South.
the ACC can get Notre Dame, then that becomes a completely different.
Oh yeah, then that changed the whole story. Yeah, but also I'm thinking right now maybe South Florida could be a possible. I know they're not really good at football right now. I know that like the whole academic like athletics is not really good, but you get the Tampa Bay market and you get maybe UCF, because UCF and USF are rivals, so maybe they could expand again to maybe 18 teams and then get UCF. But maybe South Florida could be another one. And again, I know athletics, you know, they're not really good.
Well, to your point, and this was a long time ago that I built a structure of a 72-team, 6-conference lineup of 12 teams per conference, and I put South Florida in the ACC. Now, their football program was much better then, and I really would love to know the numbers on how many people in Tampa are watching South Florida play football.
Yeah, probably not a lot right now, because again, I know they're not really good, but I don't know, maybe go back maybe like 5 years when they had 11 wins and, you know, winning a couple bowl games. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know the numbers on South Florida, what their average TV viewership is, or like what their average attendance is.
All right, Zach.
All right.
Appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a good day. All right. Yes, quite the statements made by George Kliavkoff at Pac-12 Media Day. So we thought we would jump on that. And if you missed the first, and probably most of you did, miss the first 15 or 20 minutes, I gave my rundown of what he had to say, because I thought that there were some very honest points that he made where he was very blunt at his direction and his restrained anger toward the Big 12 in particular. He didn't really take shots at the Big 10. That's funny that the Big 10 was the one that made the move to grab USC and UCLA, or accept their application, if we want to be more accurate about it, based on all information that's out there that I know of. USC and UCLA initiated the move. The Big 12, the Big 10 just simply accepted that. But most of his anger directed toward the Big 12, because he has been, in his statement, spending the last 4 weeks defending against grenades being lobbed from every corner of the Big 12 to try to destabilize our conference that has already been destabilized. From a football standpoint, it's not destabilized from a sports standpoint, because the Pac-10, if the Pac-10 continued on as it's currently configured, it would still be a tremendous sports conference in all those other sports. Not football. It's the American Conference minus, less than the American Conference. And I'm talking about the American Conference with BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati. All right. Oh, man, we got Tim on the line.
Wait, Mark, did I hear you just say that the current Pac-12 would be the equivalent of the AAC? Is that what you said?
I said off the top of all of this, I don't know at what point you joined us. So I watched your buddy George Kliavkoff and his statement.
I like that dude.
I like him too. Unfortunately, he's in a bad situation, but I like him. And I thought he was very blunt and honest. He elevated, of course, and this is the job of the commissioner. He elevated the Pac-12 higher than he should have in a number of these statements, and I called him out on those. But I understand it. It's good business. No, I made the statement that minus USC and UCLA, the new Pac-10 is in the range, and I would even say off first glance, less than what the American Conference is with BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF.
Okay. Now I'm gonna preface this with the running joke in our chat, in our after hours chat right now, is that I always feel like I'm an 8-year-old child talking to my dad. Not age, we're the same age, but whenever I bring up these arguments with you, I'm just like, oh shoot, here it comes, right? But here's what I'm looking at. So this is where I'm looking at it from.
Okay.
I'm looking at the names you just named from the AAC. I'm looking at Oregon, Washington.
Yep.
And those two alone. Do you think any of the schools you just named are on par with those two universities as a brand and on the field?
Historically, no, not even close. In the last 4 or 5 years, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But as we know, we've watched a couple seasons. What's happening right now at Oregon's Oregon? I can't figure out, and I know there's Ben in here. Someone's getting really mad. They've been handed the keys to the castle by Washington completely blowing. When Peterson stepped down, just out of the blue. Did you even know why? Did he ever come out and specifically state why he left?
What he said was that he no longer wanted the pressure of being a big-time college football coach.
Okay, that's fair enough too. That could happen at a lot of schools. And again, unless you're at the very top and you're one of those select few, but we've even seen, Mark, you could probably name us a couple of coaches that were bad hires at Ohio State. We can easily name a couple of bad coaches that were at Alabama. Again, I go down the list, and I can tell you right now, it's not fresh on everyone's lips, the mistake USC has made, 2 of them specifically in Helton and at the time, Sark wasn't a very healthy man. You're that close, really, as a program from becoming where Washington is right now. But here's what I'm going to tell you, and here's what I'm going to tell the rest of college football. Am I claiming to be national championships? No. But one coach can fix everybody's at least expectations of USC and possibly the future for USC. And we know that. That same thing is the truth at Washington. I don't think that can be said. So you bring up Cincinnati. What happens to Cincinnati when Fickle leaves? Because Fickle's leaving. He's not staying at Cincinnati forever. Do you know what I mean? We had Brian Kelly, but what did those teams really? They have a plateau. I know what Cincinnati's plateau is.
Yeah,
I know what Washington can do.
Or Oregon. Absolutely, it's not. And I made the statement when I suggested that the Big 12 go get Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Houston, the 4 teams that they grabbed before they did. I said, you can make one statement and you can take the negative from it, or you can take the positive. That UCF in its last 5 years has been at the pinnacle of its history. Cincinnati right now is at the pinnacle of its history. Houston is only removed 3 or 4 or 5 years from winning a Peach Bowl against Florida State, being a top 10 team, being at the pinnacle of its history. I know that they were really good in the 70s at spurts, but near the pinnacle of its history. BYU, maybe less or so, but they're in the top quarter, 25% of what they're capable of doing. They're near that. Okay, that you can say, wow, that's a good thing for the Big 12. The Big 12 is adding 4 programs at their strength. Or is that not a good thing? Because this is the best they're going to be. They're not going to get any better. Most likely, I would say UCF has the biggest potential because of where they're located to do big things beyond what they've shown. But so
they're in Orlando, right? UCF?
Yes.
So, right. And we just named those 2. Again, Arizona State, I know this is a number of years ago. See, there's a thing about Arizona State for years has really tripped me out because they should be doing better than they are. They're really close to LA, really close to Southern California. Arizona has shown that they're getting, you get some great recruits out of Arizona the last 5-10 years.
Yep.
So with Herm Edwards and the unholy relationship he has with the AD and just that all the debacle down there, what I'm saying is here's my point. Hopefully this is the wake-up call to the Pac-12. They go, okay, we gotta start prioritizing football again, because at one time they did. These programs were on the top. You could pull up your AP top 25 on any given Sunday or Monday, and it's going to show you that 5 or 6 Pac-12 teams in the top 25, two or so in the top 10. And that was just pretty commonplace, you know? And when I'm just kind of trying again, as I always do, because I agree. See, here's the thing. You got to remember about me. I go, yes, 9 out of 10 times with you, Mark. But every once in a while, you make a comment like that when I go, oh, I don't see it. Because again, I know what Oregon and Washington can be. Has Oregon made a mistake with landing? Duck fans, we're going to find out. You know, is Washington moving in the right direction? We're going to find out. But I do know what Washington can do with good to great coaches. Again, just like I know what USC can do with good to great coaches. And we've seen what Oregon can do with great to good. But I don't think that, I think we've seen what the programs you're talking about are G5 schools for a reason. We can't just put them into a conference and go, woo, now we got a Power 5 again. I mean, I'm looking at the Big 12, and I love my Big 12 brothers. I love college football in general, and I want the Big 12 to be healthy. But all I saw was a bunch of G5 barely hanging on P5 schools and a bunch of G5 schools, and now like, let's go SEC, let's go Big 10. You know, by the way, Pac-12, you're not worthy of being in our conference. I'm hearing the craziest crap coming out of Big 12 country. It's bizarre.
Tim, you're going to understand my statement a little bit better when I give you the origin and the context of my statement, because I'm remembering now. So this is way back at the beginning of this live stream, an hour and 22 minutes ago. The first question that was asked of George Klyavkov was, are you worried, and I'm paraphrasing, are you worried that when the college football playoff media rights come due in 2026, that minus USC and UCLA as the Pac-10, that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to say, you are no longer good enough to have an automatic entry into the college football playoff? And my statement from that, and of course he disregarded it and said, you know, basically he didn't use the term ridiculous, but he discarded the question to say, you know, why would they say that? We're a full Power 5 member. We have inclusion into the playoff and will have inclusion into the playoff. My response was, though, minus USC and UCLA. I'm not talking historically. I have great respect for Pac-12 football and have told you many times since the late 70s that I've looked at the Pac-12 throughout many seasons in the 80s and 90s and said, is this the best conference in college football? But over the last 4 or 5 years, you know, we're coming off a Pac-12 season in which my numbers might be off by a little bit, but I don't think they are because I produced videos on this. I think the Pac-12 went 7-6 against the Mountain West. The Pac-12 went 3-19 against Power 5 conferences and Notre Dame and BYU. The Pac-12 has been performing horribly over the past 4 or 5 years. So if you take that version of the Pac-12, and I know USC and UCLA did not help matters, but USC was pretty good for a couple of those seasons in the last 5 or 6 years. You take that watered down version of the Pac-12, now the Pac-10, and you size it up against what the American conferences looked like at full strength with those 4 schools that we're talking about. And I can't draw much of a conclusion between those 2 conferences. And if anything, I'll take the American conference. Now, I'm not talking historically or what's possible, talking about what's been the results on the field and the performance on the field the last 4 or 5 years. And maybe the SEC and the Big Ten would make that decision looking at if the Pac-12 continues to perform as it has the last couple of years for another 3 or 4 seasons leading into 2026 and says, how do we give you automatic entry into the playoff? You are not a Power 5 conference anymore.
I'm not going to say the guy's name, but I put it through. The mods didn't let you put your comment through, but I let you call me an idiot. You're clearly from Big 12 country. So what I'm going to come back with that is these decisions are not made off of the last 4 years. If it was, what the hell is USC doing in the Big 12, Big 10? What the hell is UCLA doing in the Big 10? These decisions that are being made right now, Mark, are based on your brand, your market, and your potential. Because I think the Big 10 knows, and again, I'm not going to get my conspiracy hat on, my tinfoil hat on, but I'm thinking that USC, by the way, you said, Mark, do you believe that Texas and Oklahoma reached out to the SEC? I'm thinking, and I don't think the SEC reached out to those 2 schools. I'm thinking this all began with ESPN and Fox, and they're the proxy. I don't think. I mean, sure, USC's teams are going, yeah, we'd love opportunities putting it out the feelers, just like these kids do when they want to transfer, right? The prime mover in all of this, you're looking at two entities. You're looking at Fox and you're looking at ESPN. Both of these entities are what are oh my cuss, sorry, Mark, are screwing up our sport, like literally screwing the sport up. For what? For money. It's all this stuff is driven off of money. You give Kliavkov 3 years for Washington and USC and UCLA. I mean, I hate to say it, UCLA looks, and I can't stand Chip Kelly, looks like they're turning this thing around. It may have taken him a lot longer than we thought, but Chip Kelly's not some horrible coach, you know? He just hasn't had the players. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm getting off my topic here. But these decisions were based on networks and executives making decisions about the potential of these schools. And if we throw $100 million, $75 to $100 million at USC, we know that they're going to make us some money. And they knew that Oklahoma and Texas, you know, we start putting more money. Well, actually, Texas doesn't need money. We start putting money in these schools, they can start making the upgrades they need and start making some money. I don't think that you could throw $100 million at Cincinnati and they would be Missouri is what they would be. If you threw $100 million at Washington, Mark, they would go out and they would attract a great coach because they've got great program. They have all the academics, all the stuff that Tony always talks about. They're way at the top of that stuff, and they would turn around. Again, people forget in 2017 with a good coach in Peterson, little old Washington was in the playoffs. And I know I've known for years in the Pac-12. You watch Pac-12, so you know Washington is more often than not a solid program that wins bowl games, that has NFL caliber players. So I don't see any of these G5 schools or the fringe P5 schools sitting around throwing their nose up at schools like Oregon and Washington. I just don't see it. BYU is great. Sorry, Chris, you know, and all these other guys. I'm telling you, when were we talking about the teams you just named 2 years ago or 1 year ago, Mark? Right? Maybe Cincinnati would come, but this is cute. They're on a run, right? Oh, I hope Fickle stays, you know. And we were talking last night in our chat about Campbell. Remember what Iowa State was before Campbell? That dude leaves.
Sure.
And they're in a wasteland again. You know what I mean? So Baylor is awesome. And I love Baylor. Baylor fans are freaking. By the way, in general, even Oklahoma fans, when they're not talking shit, you know, they're good fans. And they're great,
guy.
Right? But the problem is, the problem is these Baylor has Aranda, and they've had some good coaches. But I mean, are we talking that they're now all of a sudden better than Washington and Oregon? I just don't see it. I don't see it. Well, if we talk about last year and this year, we're not talking about 2 or 3 years. We're talking about programs. We're talking about schools.
Again, if we get back to my original statement, though, I was talking about, yes, you have to look historically. You've got to look at brand, but you also have to look historically at what matters and what doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that Harvard was a football power 100 years ago. That's history, but that is truly history. But some history does still continue on and is impactful on the present. But I was looking at, again, based on the context of the question made to Kliavkov about 2026, that if the Pac-12 with no USC and UCLA, that's a major, major, major hit to the conference, plays the way it has for the past 4 or 5 years. We're going to be looking at 10 years of awful football, minus the biggest TV market, minus its biggest brand, biggest football power, minus probably its 4th biggest football power, negotiating a contract to try to be on the level of the SEC and the Big Ten for playoff spots. They're going to be viewed like the American Conference.
But you brought up history. You brought up schools from 100 years ago. I'm talking about schools that made the playoffs 5 years ago. You know, it's not outside of Oklahoma. What has the Big 12 done? What have they done?
Well, Texas won a national championship in 2005 and appeared in a championship game in 2009.
That's a long time ago.
Won a Sugar Bowl 3 years ago and finished in the top 10 in the country. Okay, I'm not defending Texas because I trash Texas most of the time because, yeah, they've been awful for 12 years. Okay, getting back to my point is this. Let's say this settles down somewhat, and the Pac-10 is sitting there with its 10, has not added or even add San Diego State and Fresno State, gets back up to 12, but does not replace USC and UCLA. We come up on a new playoff proposal, a new playoff format in 2026. New rights have to be, the money's got to be redistributed. The whole deal's redone. 12 teams, 16 teams, new networks involved, Fox, new playoff. The SEC and the Big Ten may look at the Pac-10 or 12 at that point, much like the Big 12, and say, your champion, we will give your champion entry into the playoff, but there's no way that those conferences are going to have anywhere close to the weight that they've had in the past in getting teams into a playoff, minus Oklahoma, USC, Texas, and UCLA. They're just not nearly as good. There's no way that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to share equally with those conferences that are bringing very little.
I guess we'll have to agree to disagree because of the
We're going
list
to
of
have
people.
a 16-team, 16. Let's say we've got a 12-team playoff. We're going to routinely, if these leagues settle into what they are right this second, we're going to see 4 teams from the SEC and the Big Ten each, and we're going to see a Big 12 or Pac-12 second place team struggle maybe to get inclusion into a playoff.
Well, if we're doing top 16, you're saying the top 16 AP or
So let's say 12, but okay,
12.
16.
Okay, at 12, yeah, you'd have trouble getting 2 teams in the Pac-12 getting in. I'm not defending the Pac-12 over the past 2 years, especially, and going back to 3 years. That would be lunacy, right? So some of the people in the chat, you guys, anyway. What I find difficult to understand is that I've seen Group of 5 schools have great seasons, maybe in a run of 2 or 3 years, and then they go away.
Yeah,
Washington hasn't gone away over the years, and this is going to, in the end. Let's just put it this way, Mark. When this thing all gets shaken down to like maybe 32 or 40 some odd schools, we have this big, 2 gigantic mega conference NFL light, minor league system, which we are going towards eventually. Schools like Washington and Oregon are going to be in that. Schools like Cincinnati and, I'm sorry, Big 12, most of you guys will not be in that conversation. So right now, Washington made a big mistake with Jimmy Lake. There's no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about that. But we wouldn't even be talking like this if they hadn't made a good hire. If USC hadn't made bad hires, we may not talk about any of this as well. But to say these programs all of a sudden are relegated to G5 level by the Big 12 pulling a bunch of G5 schools and just leapfrogging the Pac-12, I just don't get it. Because so we're saying because 2 years ago we wouldn't have said these things, Mark. And yeah, 2 years of bad out of conference play because you have Herm Edwards with some bad hiring decisions. I honestly think Kliakov is going to have a meeting and circle the wagon and say, look, you guys are going to be AAC level unless you guys start hiring some offensive, some coaches that are going to be able to move the ball and put points on the board against some of these teams, or else don't come to me later on, because he can only work with what he's got. And what USC and UCLA and and Washington have given them is not anything to work with. But if you get the right coaches at those schools, I don't even know why we're having this conversation, because we're talking, there's a reason why for the past 20 years, these schools that we're talking about now in the Big 12, what have those teams really done? So again, fire away, chat. Tell me about all this. What has USC done? Well, again, have your schools that we talked about there, have they finished in the top 10 with the worst coach in their history? We did it twice. We finished in the top 10 in recruiting with Clay Helton, for God's sake. I'm not worried about USC. USC is that we fix our coach, we fix our program. I'm not worried about Washington. They fix their coach, they fix their program, just like at any school. You know? So I don't see the situation with Cincinnati, Central Florida, and these schools you're naming, and BYU. These schools have always been tier 2 schools, and they're always going to be tier 2 schools.
They're playing.
I can say that. I don't have a show, Mark. I can say all that all I want. You don't have to worry. You can be very sensitive.
They're playing in a tier 1 conference now, though. And if that's not a tier 1 conference, then the Pac-10 is certainly not a tier 1 conference. Then the SEC and the Big Ten are the only tier 1 conferences, and then the others are tier 2 conferences. So I
correct.
Can categorize.
But no, Mark,
okay.
What you just said, what you just said is correct.
Okay.
You know, I mean, right? That's really where it's going now.
But the beginning of the discussion here was Pac-12 or Pac-10, Big 12. In that comparison, along with the American Conference or what it used to be.
Who's this Tyndall guy, Mark? Do you know him? R.W. Tyndall? Who is this guy?
Comments all the time.
Does he?
Yes.
Really? I'm whining, huh, buddy? Hey, listen, does he ever come on? I would love to talk to this guy.
He doesn't come on, but he comments all the time. He's a big
he's a Georgia fan. They said?
I think he is. R.W. Tyndall, let us know who you root for. I lose track of people's teams. I think he's a Georgia fan. He's always putting down Ohio State. I know that.
Yeah, anyway, Tyndall, have a good day, buddy. You seem very angry about sports in general. But all right, Mark. Well, that's really all I said. I couldn't. You know, I'm sorry. I couldn't take that comment. I mean, That's like I told you, and it proved perfectly. I feel like the child being scolded by his dad. But I am going to say this to you. I think if you and I wrote a list about the best programs in the country just 2 years ago, the schools I just named are going to be on that list. Central Florida, I mean, we joke about them getting a national championship, right? I mean, we joke about that when they go undefeated, you know. I'm not crapping on these schools as much as I'm saying, like Utah, which look what Utah's done. Utah gave you guys all you guys could handle in that bowl game, Mark.
Yeah.
You know, we're not talking about these lower division schools.
Without
these
4
schools,
NFL players on the field. But yeah, you're right.
What's that?
I said without 4 NFL players on the field, but you're right. Yes.
Well, they were also playing with what string with their cornerbacks? I mean, they were like they were like their 5th or 6th. They had 2 tragedies.
Well. Yeah.
So I mean, I think those things losing some wide receivers and them having their cornerback situation, and you guys taking advantage of those corners, kind of even itself out, right?
I'm looking up my most recent program rankings from a year ago. Well, they're kind of hard to find, so I don't know where I had different teams. Let's see this. Let's see my top 40. I got UCF at 38. Who are we looking for? Of course, Oregon's got to be. I'm sure I had them at 10 or 12 or something in that range. So anyway, I got to scan through this video to find them. That's going to take forever. Anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah, maybe so, Ben. That might be true.
Oregon. I said Oregon hit the 8th best program in the country a year ago.
What about Washington?
I bet I had them around 20. I think I had them like 18 or 19.
Where did you have Central Florida, BYU, and
Central Florida 38? I had USC at 17. Washington 19. Probably at Cincinnati at 40, 45.
So I'm not talking ridiculous. What I'm trying to say is there are 2 conferences now. And USC was just lucky enough to get a golden ticket to be bailed out of what is happening in college football right now. That the networks are throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at 2 conferences and trying to spread the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And don't read any of my comments wrong. I mean, don't read any of my comments wrong. My comment is purely this. The comment is you can't take the best teams. Not the best teams. How do I say that? the premier teams in a conference out, the ones that generate the most income, and and in the case of the Big 12, the ones that are really were leading the conference for basically forever. You can't take them out and then add 4 really good G5 schools and then say that they're on par with any conference. And I'm not saying that the Pac-12 will be on the level of the Big Ten, because they weren't on the level of the Big Ten or the SEC before this all happened. You know?
True.
So when you take teams out, I mean, so if we add, so let's put it this way. So if you got the Pac-12 schools, right? The Pac-12 conference, and we add BYU, Central Florida, Houston, whatever, does that make them on par with the Big Ten? Of course it doesn't. But
it gives them an opportunity.
But I just don't see how we can say that the programs I named at the top of the Pac-12 are on the level of the best schools in the Big 12 at this point. If we say on the field for the last couple of years, maybe, because Aranda's a great coach. But I'm saying the programs, the actual programs we're talking about, not let's compare head to head. Let's not compare the last 2 years on where you finished. I'm not saying that's clear. Those numbers are just blatant. But there's also a reason why, again, like I'm saying, is the value isn't how you did in the last 2 years, because otherwise UCLA wouldn't even sniff a conference. Matter of fact, I don't even know if the AAC would take them at this point. And then USC, the way they played, maybe they'd be lucky to make it in the Sun Belt, the way that they've been playing and the way they've been treating their program and how much they've sucked the last couple of years. But that's not the case. Why? Because the Big Ten knows 2 things. One, LA market. That's huge. That's number one why USC and UCLA got the. But they also know if you give USC and UCLA, and oh God, make me sick to say it, and UCLA, you give them the right coach, they're going to be a top 10 team. And we just know that. Now you give them $100 million, UCLA and USC, to do that with. I think things look pretty okay for them. But I can't avoid the idea that we're going to relegate the Pac-12 to where the Big Ten is, because they added some G5 schools. That's it. I know I'm the bad guy. Everyone's all mad. That's fine. I don't care. I'm sorry. I'll say it. Mark can't say it because well, he has all you guys out there. But I will say it. Adding those G5 schools does not make them a better conference than the Pac-12, because the top of the Pac-12 will be a better brand and better football. That's the way it is.
It's a deeper conference.
Well, it's a deeper. Yeah.
I'm not talking about the number of teams. I'm talking about in terms of decent football playing. It's a deeper conference.
Yeah, and I agree. If they, hey Ben, why don't you make a call, bud? And then if they the thing is if they don't wake up, and Kliavkov, I think, is kind of spinning his wheels now at this point without USC to lead it, because again, the ACC, the Big 12 had a team a flagship team that carried those 2 conferences. In the past 20 years, I've heard, everyone in this chat's heard, and you've heard, the ACC is dead. At one point, I was hearing that all the time on ESPN. It was, oh, they're dead. Then last year we hear, oh, the Big 12's dead. Now, oh, the Pac-12's dead, right? We keep hearing this stuff. And we're all reactionary, But if USC or UCLA or Oregon or Washington had been putting a team, or the Pac-12 had put Washington, say Washington and Oregon were in the playoffs every year, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. It's at the college level. They have made bad decisions. So I don't know. I just don't see it. I think Baylor is kicking ass. I think I love Dave Aranda. I mean, I hope they hang on to him forever. If they do, they're going to be just fine. They're going to be trouble for any team and anywhere if they keep that guy. I don't know if they can. Cincinnati seems to do pretty good, but I think they've hit their ceiling because they're playing in the shadow of a pretty good school. I don't know if they're going to be able to get the recruits they need to go to that next level, sharing Ohio with Ohio State. I just think they're unlucky. That's just the way it is. I think Fickle's, matter of fact, I would have jumped at the chance to have Aranda or Fickle or Campbell, before I found out who we were getting. But even then, I would be just as happy with Aranda at this point. I honestly would, as Lincoln Riley. I absolutely would.
Okay.
But I'm just being honest about Baylor and the schools we're talking about. and the fact that they're making $40 million a year when everyone else is making $100 million a year, and the gap's going to go. All right, Mark.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate
right.
you riling everybody up.
Oh, it's fun. It's always fun to see people that are angry about facts, but I'll catch you later.
Okay, Tim. Appreciate it. You can talk to Tim all the time. See, actually, this is a tremendous segue because you can talk to Tim all the time and all these other people that we're bringing on here, a number of others, like 60 that we've got in Discord. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, join our Discord. You can talk college football all the time. All right, let's get to our next caller. Oh, J-Dub's here. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm just trying to survive another Tim Prangley call there. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. Yeah, you are whining. You're whining. Well, I love Tim and I appreciate his point, but I'll get to my take on that in a little bit. I started out confused because first I had to hear a guy that didn't know that half of 6 was 3.
Yeah.
Then I had to hear somebody who eats cucumber sandwiches with the crust cut off and calls cookies biscuits and biscuits scones, talking about how we probably didn't really need to play for a national championship. I understand defending the Pac-12, Pac-10. I get that. But you just took the 1 and the 2 out of there. You just took away the second largest TV market in the United States. That hurts. And this thing about Oregon, where's this love? Can you explain to me, Mark, where this love from Oregon comes from? You're of the same generation as me. Oregon, until about 10 years ago, if you thought about them at all, they were a track school. Prefontaine. They were a football entity of 0 caliber until about 10 years ago. They had absolutely no impact whatsoever on the national scene. Arizona and Arizona State has had very little. When was the last time UCLA was playing in a game in late November or in a bowl game that had any impact on a national championship? Washington and USC are different. They're the power teams in that conference. I don't. All this love for Oregon is recent love. It's not, in my opinion, it's not historically based. It's based on what's happened maybe in the last since maybe 2010. Can you tell me I'm wrong? Explain to me why I'm wrong on that.
Well, I would say that Oregon prior to Chip Kelly, from the mid 80s to the late 2000s, first decade of the 2000s, Oregon was South Carolina, Oregon was Purdue, Oregon was Kansas State, something of that. They were going to bowl games most of the time. They had a Rose Bowl season in 1994 in which they weren't really that good. They were 8-4 and went to the Rose Bowl. That was their peak. That was it. But they were an okay football program. They were a top 40 to 50 football program. And then, of course, they took off in the late 2000s, around 07, 08. In that range, they took off. And under Chip Kelly, they were a top 3 to 5 program. And now they've settled into being more of a top 15 to 20 program.
And they've had the great good fortune of having USC and Washington both at the same time be on a down dip while they're up, and they have consistently failed to cash in. To my mind, they haven't cashed in at the highest level. Now, I know everybody says it's not just national championships, but how about major bowl wins? How about big wins against big teams? How about not being one of those schools that play on the left coast at 9 o'clock at night, where the whole rest of the country just considers you kind of an afterthought?
Well, they've always had to fight that, the Pac-12.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, I don't know how you overcome that, but I just think that the Pac-12 for as much as they've had some great moments in their past, they're walking wounded right now with the 2 LA schools gone, with the LA TV market gone, and before Tim pulls his beard out, I'm not here to defend the Big 12. He's absolutely right. The Big 12 was pretty much Oklahoma out of the out of the Big 8, and Texas out of the Southwest. Those two were the stars, the power of as far as football goes, of the Big 12. Most of the Big 12 schools have been, moderate at best. Iowa State's been horrible most of the time. Kansas, okay, you had a little Mangino spurt, but they've been horrible. Most of them are nothing to write home about. They're just kind of they're right down through the middle prairies of the country, which is not a great huge population area. It's not a great huge talent area. They're kind of like fighting not to be mediocre. And I agree. I don't know that adding BYU, Cincinnati, UAU. I mean, I understand why they did it, but I don't know that the sum of those 4 equal the 2 that you lost, if that makes any sense.
They don't. I think that's all they could do, though. I thought they made the best move that they could possibly make.
Right. Yeah. I think they were I agree. I think they were in a position where, I mean, what do? We got to do something. We can't just sit here. We've got to respond somehow. And they had fairly limited options, I think, in how to respond. I want to broach a subject with you. All this talk about somebody said something about West Virginia to the ACC, and maybe they could take Cincinnati with them or whatever. There's all this realignment BS that's going around. A lot of people out there are talking about, well, what if they go and get, as if these conferences are going to actively poach the other conference. Now, unless they really are hiding it behind smoke and mirrors, I've been led to understand that it was Oklahoma and Texas who approached the SEC, that it was USC and UCLA who approached the Big Ten, that the SEC and the Big Ten didn't actively go out and try to recruit and steal from their opposing conferences. Is that your understanding?
Well, that's either the cleaned up version or that's the truth, but that's
right,
what we're
right.
led to believe. Yes.
Because there's this always thing, why doesn't the SEC kick out Vanderbilt? Why doesn't the Big Ten kick out Northwestern and Illinois? Because they can't. There's no language in the contracts for these things, I think, outside of some kind of complete moral turpitude, some outrageous act that would allow 13 teams to vote 13-0 to expel one of the other teams. You're just not going to do it. No. And there's no way somebody like, you think Vanderbilt's going to go, yeah, you're right. I guess we don't fit in the SEC anymore. Let's leave $100 million on the table. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Yeah, I just don't, when it comes to who's pursuing whom, whether it's the conference or the teams, yes, technically it's the conferences. And until somebody shows me evidence of anything else, I'm going to believe it's the teams pursuing the conference. However, now that we're in this atmosphere that we're in, this environment that's been established, I got to think that the teams, the programs, we should call them, the schools, not the teams, the schools are more apt to think and be aware to explore. And so if you're and I don't know that this is happening, but if you're a Florida State or North Carolina, why not contact the SEC or the Big Ten or both and see what their level of interest is? Especially since the ACC may be compromised soon.
Yes. I am, again, I have, I'm one of the old fuddy-duddies. I'm the get off your lawn old guy that lives down on the corner that wishes all this would go back to 1990 and that South Carolina and Arkansas never even came into the SEC. I want to go back to the way. Let's go back to the way it was, by God.
Well, you know how many people, as soon as you said that, J-Dub, were like, what do you mean? What's he talking about? Arkansas and South Carolina not in the SEC? What?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I just shut off 2/3 of the chat. Well, but anyway, my concern is I think the West Coast teams will figure out a way to survive, or they'll merge with somebody. My concern is what happens with the ACC, because I think that's the story that's not getting reported here. I really think they are the dead man walking. I think you might have a watered down Big 12, a watered down Pac-12 survive, but the ACC I think is just going to be gutted, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. And I agree with you because of what I've stated a number of times, even right after all this started to break with USC and UCLA. It's because the Big 12, for all the reasons that Tim talked about, that you brought up, that I've talked about, that it's mediocre, their programs aren't valuable enough to be picked off by the SEC and the Big 10. So they're protected by their mediocrity. The ACC has high-end potential and value at the top. Clemson, Florida State, Miami in particular, maybe North Carolina, they have high-end value at the top. And if those get picked off, then they're an American conference.
Yeah, I mean, there are no more crown jewels to come and get out of the Big 12. They don't exist. They've already been robbed.
Yep.
And that's what I worry about. That's why I worry about the ACC schools, because you mentioned the cherry picked come out of the ACC. Well, that's going to leave 6, 8, 10 schools twisting in the wind, with no place to go. Because you got to figure, if there's cherry picking and the ACC gets picked apart, it'll be the SEC and the Big 10 doing it. So they're going to take who they want and then not care what's left over. So the what's left overs are just going to be floating around with no home. They're going to be like a man without a country. What do I do now? That's why I worry. That's why I worry about that. I wish it hadn't come to this, but it has, and so now I guess let's try to limit the damage, or let's hope the damage is as limited as possible, because I do actually care. I take the Saban approach, and everybody's going to say, no, Saban doesn't care. I think in a generic way, in an overall grandiose guy, he does care about the actual state of the game, as a big picture state of the game. Trying to speak as an elder statesman, as it were, or whatever. He's certainly considered that by the other coaches, and I worry about these other teams. What about these teams that get the left behind teams, the Wazoos? I have a friend whose wife is a professor of English literature at Oregon State. What happens to the Beavers? Schools like that. You want Virginia Tech, or do they just kind of like go into the ether? What about Boston College? So it's obviously I don't root for these teams, but that doesn't mean that I want something disastrous to happen to them. But I have to tell you, Mark, it's getting to be football season, and whether you tailgate at the game or you just have some friends over and you tailgate in the backyard, maybe you're needing some new utensils for the grill. Like you need a new tongs, you need a new spatula, you could use a new wire brush. You've been using the same things for like 10 years, and your wife's been like, "Why did you get rid of these crappy things? You just order a new set." So you go online and you're shopping around and you see this new set. Right? And you're like, well, while you're at it, you're looking around at other things, and you're like, you know what? I've been wanting one of these coolers that's got the handle on it that I can pull the cooler instead of just dragging it or having to carry it. So you buy one of those too. Well, where are you shopping at? Well, you're shopping on Amazon. But then you realize I got the MarkRogersTV link. And you use the link, and then the dog's sitting there looking at you, and he's smiling. He's going, "Good master, you done well." And your whole night is made because you did the right thing. So use the link in the description, help Mark out, mash the thumbs up button, and enjoy the season. Thanks, Mark.
J-Dub, appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
You too.
J-Dub comes up with a different and unique way of leading us into the Amazon link. It's down in the description section of all the videos, not necessarily this one right now because it's not populated yet, but the rest of them. Go to any of the videos, grab the Amazon link next to where it says in caps, Amazon. You grab that link, you enter Amazon that way. Then the rest is exactly the same. You're on Amazon. So you just use the link, you're good to go. I will make a statement before the real MVP jumps on here that it's funny because as soon as Tim kind of concluded his call and then J-Dubs jumped on and had some derogatory things to say about the Pac-12, tons of you came to the defense of the Pac-12, and we went on a run of just about everything positive that the Pac-12 has done over the last 20 years was posted in the chat. Any game that they won to prove that we're good, because in 2007, this happened because Oregon beat Michigan State in 2014. All right. The real MVP's here. How's it going, man?
It's going, Mark. How about you?
I am doing just fine. I was just amused by these Pac-12 fans getting riled up, and they're defending.
Well, I'm going to rile them up some more if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. That's why we're here.
Mark, the Pac-12 isn't just a bad team. They haven't had a bad season. They are a bad conference. When's the last time they won a bowl game? Just a bowl game.
Yeah. 2019. They've gone 2 consecutive bowl seasons without winning a bowl game.
Yeah, and there's no excuse for that. You think if you did something over and over again by accident, you would win something, you know?
Especially since one of those games was against Central Michigan.
Yeah, I know. Utah State beat Oregon State.
Yeah.
I mean, they're playing the heavy hitters, though. It's like, I don't understand Tim's logic. He's like, these group of 5 teams that are really, really good, they couldn't compete with the Pac-12. You've got a group of 5 teams beating the Pac-12 already. Are you kidding me? And these are below average group of 5 teams. The SEC or the Big Ten would schedule Central Michigan as a cupcake game. If somebody saw Georgia versus Central Michigan, they would think, oh, it's that November game that everybody trashes on the SEC for. I mean, my goodness, the Pac-12. And then the, audacity to say without USC and UCLA, the Pac-12 will be better than the Big 12. If you added those 4 schools, they would I think they would finish 4 out of the top 6 in the Pac-12. Would you?
The way the Pac-12 is playing football right now and has for the past 4 or 5 years, yeah, they're in that range. Yeah, they're in that range. So you're talking about the 4 new teams to the Big 12 finishing in the top 6. Utah, Oregon. It's right now Utah and Oregon would keep, those other.
Washington needs to worry about beating Montana. Those powerhouse teams first.
Well, let's not over-accentuate one season. Let's understand that Washington's been pretty recently good.
I understand that, but
they went to the Rose Bowl in 2018.
I understand, but when you have a game like that, it leaves a very bitter, sour taste in your mouth, Mark. There should be no excuse for it. And even with Washington, okay, they're 4 out of the top 7. This idea that they just couldn't compete at all. They would just go 500 or below is crazy to me. They're better than the Arizona schools. They're better than Colorado. They're better than Cal. They're better than Washington State. I mean, when was the last time even the Pac-12 had a team make the playoffs?
2016.
Oh, okay. And when was the last time the new Big 12 is going to have a team make the playoffs?
Oh, the new Big 12. You
Yeah.
mean going forward or just the teams that are left there?
The teams that are left with Cincinnati, BYU.
Of course, Cincinnati made it last year, but they're going to be playing a much different schedule now.
Well, Mark, making the playoffs is still very impressive regardless of the schedule. There isn't a whole lot of teams that could say, hey, we made the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, Cincinnati's loss to Alabama is been about as equal or slightly better than some of the teams that were the 4 seed beforehand. I mean, we could give a shout out to Lincoln Riley losing 63-7 or 63-14 to LSU. Everybody's worried about him, man. If he can find a defense, if they just played arena style football where it was all offense, Lincoln Riley, he would be the best coach ever. But until he gets a defense, a proven defense that can compete with Ohio State and the SEC, why should we concern him as this national championship contender coach?
He just made a statement. It must have been in Pac-12 media days, or maybe USC had a media day. This was just the other day. I didn't look into this, but he was quoted as saying, everybody's talking about Alabama and Ohio State, and he named a couple other teams, Georgia, Notre Dame, and they need to be looking out for us. I got to look up this quote because I was just amused by this quote, thinking, you know what? Why don't you shut up and do something first? Instead of talking about how you should be talked about with Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama. Like,
yeah, you in order to be with those types of teams, you can't just win it. Even if you won it all one season, okay? You have to be consistently great over a long period of time. There's a reason LSU is not in that conversation with Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia, Ohio State. And what we're going to see, Mark, is USC will probably make the playoffs in 2023 or before they go to the Big Ten, and they will get absolutely crushed. They will lose 45-0, 45-7.
I don't know about that.
Did you expect 63 points to be scored on them in 2019 with Oklahoma?
Yeah. Well,
anything?
If those LSU players would have been paid to score more points, shoot, they might have scored 90.
Yeah.
They took their foot off the pedal.
Yeah, I think that they could have put it in break. They could have gone in reverse and still beaten Oklahoma.
They had 49 at halftime. That's crazy in a playoff game.
Yeah. That might have been the most lopsided New Year's Six bowl game maybe ever. Like, that game wasn't close from like play one. It was over. And I understand USC fans being hyped. I understand the excitement because they've been terrible compared to what they're supposed to be. And they've got this great coach, but he's not going to send them to the national championship. It's just not going to happen. Now, are they going to be a top 5 team in the future? Probably. But another thing that's concerning is them going to the Big Ten. If you're going to the Big Ten, it's a whole lot harder than the Pac-12. I mean, Michigan's probably better than them. Ohio State's better than them. Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Iowa. Those are all consistently top 20 schools. And you have to play them one after another after another. I mean, it's nice when you play Oregon week 8 and then you get Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado the week before, you know?
I found my Lincoln Riley quote. He says, everyone's talking about Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Georgia. USC has a seat at that table as well. In fact, I believe we're at the head of that table, so get ready. We're coming. That's just... You've done nothing. There's just no reason to make that statement. It's just a dumb statement.
That gives me very Texas is back vibes. Good. So let me ask you, Mark, since Tim was trying to push you, I'll push you. Is the Big 12, the new Big 12, going to be better than the new Pac-10?
Yes.
Okay. Is it close?
It's not a huge gap, but it's also not close. It's
Is the gap between the 6th best conference or the best group of 5 school conference better, closer than the gap between the Big 12 and the Pac-10?
Well, you have very much a compromise. So the American Conference is dead,
right?
From that standpoint, without those 4. And
hey,
so
Mountain West is pretty good.
It's all to the Mountain West. And the Mountain West, of course, we know played equal with the Pac-10 this last year. And now you don't have USC and UCLA. I would still say begrudgingly that the Pac-12 is closer to the Big 12 than, or the Pac-10 is closer to the Big 12 than the distance between them and the Mountain West. I don't want to go too crazy over. I know it's been about 4 or 5 years of bad results, and it's been one season for sure of just excruciatingly horrible results. 3-19 against the Power 5.
And that record's not looking to improve. I mean, Florida was an opening line favorite against Utah. And then now it's shifted to where Utah's favorite. But the 13th best school in the SEC, 13th, if you look at the results, was favored opening line against the Pac-12 champion.
Well, I don't think Florida's the 13th best team in the SEC.
If they lost to Missouri, they lost to South Carolina, they lost to LSU.
Season. It's a new season. I'm gonna elevate them over Missouri and possibly South Carolina. But the SEC is so deep. And I was trying to make this point to somebody the other day that we know Alabama, Georgia are 1-2, and we know Vandy's 14, but that 3 through 13 is difficult to seed. So yeah, they might be 13th. They might be 10th, whatever they are. Yes, they are playing the Pac-12 champion.
And they were opening line favorites.
Yeah.
That's bad.
That's enormous. Yeah.
Does the Pac-10 or 12 get a significant Power 5 out of conference win this season?
How many chances do they have? They've got Oregon, Georgia, Utah, Florida,
USC, Notre Dame.
So who's going to play Notre Dame? USC and Stanford are going to play Notre Dame. Yeah, I'm going to say yes, because I think they win one of those games.
It's probably going to be the Utah-Florida game.
Probably, or maybe USC beats Notre Dame at home at the end of the year. That's possible. I don't know who else is playing anybody decent. I think Colorado plays Minnesota, but they lost to them 2 years ago, 30-0. I don't think they're going to beat them.
Yeah, Colorado's is projected to finish last by the Pac-12 media.
Yeah.
Below Arizona. If you're below Arizona after the season they had last year, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. How bad of a program you got to be. I mean, Arizona last year.
Arizona for the last 3 years or so has just been, yeah, they were 1-11 last year. They were 0-5 the year before. Yeah, Arizona is 1-6. Arizona is 1-24 in its last 25 games.
And that one win was because half of Cal's team got COVID.
Oh yeah.
Like half their team got COVID. All their starters had to sit out, and they had to begrudgingly get a win.
Yeah, they've lost to Northern Arizona and San Diego State and a bunch of bad Pac-12 teams and Hawaii, and yeah, it's bad.
Yeah. Well, Mark, that's all I got for you. SEC is still number one. Pac-10, 12, 8, 6, whatever it'll be by the end of this stream. Deep last. Not last, deep last.
All right, Daryl. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, 2 more calls. We'll take these 2 and then hit the road. We appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Do all those good things to help us build the channel. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media. Just let people know, hey, when we got a stream, if you jump in here yourself, you can also go on Twitter or Facebook and let people know that we're here. All right, Hunter's on the line.
How's it going today, Mark?
I am doing just fine. How's it going?
Good. I agree with a lot of what the last caller just said about the Pac-12. My question is to you though. Do you think that the people who are making all these decisions about the conference realignment, all the things that are going on right now, do you think that they have the best interest of the sport at heart?
No. They should not necessarily have the best interest of the sport at heart because they were hired to represent their conference.
But shouldn't there be a balance between their job, what they were hired to do, and should there just be a balance of that?
Well, let me put you in Kevin Warren's spot as the Big Ten commissioner. The SEC's the best conference already, and the SEC added Oklahoma and Texas last summer to go to 16 teams, and you're at 14, and you were behind the SEC decisively, not by a mile, but it's clear to everyone that the SEC is the best. And they just added 2 enormous brands. So that just doesn't add to the football on the field. That adds to the value of the conference that's going to be able to make more money in media rights and therefore pump that more back into football to become even better and better and better. So what do? Well, you were hired to be the representative to lead the Big Ten. You weren't hired to be the commissioner of college football. You were hired to be the commissioner of the Big Ten. So when USC and UCLA apply for membership to the Big Ten, what are you supposed to do? Say, no, I'm wanting to move on the best behalf of college football and not necessarily the Big Ten and turn them down. No, you are hired by the Big Ten to be the commissioner.
No, and I get what they're supposed to do in all of that. It just seems to me that if you have no fans, you have no college football.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that it's all going to go away. I mean, of course, I don't think that's the case. But I'm just saying that it's just frustrating from a person, from the standpoint of somebody who loves college football in general, to see all these things go down. And like I've said before, Alabama, SEC taking on Texas and Oklahoma, this is just all unintended consequences of that happening. And I think that unintended consequences happen in just about all phases of life. But I think this is one of the things that there's a negative unintended consequence of what has taken place.
Yeah, we're basically not going to recognize college football.
Yes, and to the point about the Pac, let me defend the Pac-12 a little bit here.
Okay.
Do you think that it is because those schools are predominantly basketball schools, so to speak? Do you think that some of it is because they put their resources in a different place, or do you think those programs those schools are really committed to football, but just aren't that great?
Well, first of all, I could stand corrected. Somebody leave it in the chat if I need to be corrected here because I don't follow men's basketball and have not for 10 years or whatever. I don't believe that the Pac-12 has been that good in men's basketball for quite a long time, first of all. So it's
you got UCLA. I like college basketball as well, so I can speak a little bit on this. UCLA has been a consistent program.
Really?
Yeah, they've been the last 3 seasons. They've been pretty good.
Well, that's the last 3 seasons. I'm talking about like in the last 10 years. I don't know that the Pac-12 is. If you lined up Pac-12 Final Four appearances in the last 10 years. I don't think it would come anywhere close to the Big Ten or the SEC or the ACC. I don't think. Again, I don't follow the sport, but from what I hear, Pac-12 basketball has not been that great for quite a long time. Anyway, to finish off your question, there are other sports. Now, if we're talking about track and field, baseball, softball, tennis, swimming, all those things, the Pac-12 is phenomenal. But I don't think the Pac-12 is pumping any more money. I don't know this for a fact. Again, we're talking about things that I'm not aware of, but I don't believe that the Pac-12 would be just funneling tons of money into tennis and baseball just to be really good. They basically already have established great programs and have for decades and decades and decades in those sports. And number two, they just breed those sports and benefit from high school levels being exceptional in that part of the country. And they also benefit from the weather in California and Arizona to be good at those sports.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just like everybody else right now. I think I'm just a little frustrated at some of the consideration of the overall health of the sport is not being taken into consideration when some of these decisions are being made. That's why we need you, Mark, to step in as college football commissioner.
Well, if somebody with a half a brain, whether that be me, and I will claim to have at least half a brain, or somebody else would be the commissioner, that would solve at least the problems of perspective. It wouldn't solve all the problems. They have to be worked on, but it would solve the problem of exactly what we're talking about here. Conferences working on their own behalf, doing what's best for them to the detriment of the rest of the sport. That's why the NFL thrives, because there's a commissioner and a group of owners that all vote together for the best of the sport.
Yeah, and do you think that the sport will come to that at some point?
It may, but there's going to have to be a whole lot of cooperation for that to happen, an agreement. And that takes a lot. That takes major moves. And that takes some groundswell, grassroots leadership to pop up to say, we're going to grab Greg Sankey and get him in a room with Kevin Warren, and we're going to talk some sense into them. And then they've got to agree on who's it going to be, or how many people, and what are their responsibilities going to be, and what to be able to pull that off is a lot.
Or will schools just start to have basically mini GMs?
What good is that going to do, though? They're, again, just going to act on their own behalf.
But, I mean, if you hire somebody who wanted to, I don't know. I'm just I'm trying to spitball ideas just off the top of my head to kind of figure, to figure out some way of making all of this better for everybody involved.
A very basic format to bring some health to the sport would be just to simply go back, restructure the conferences to what they geographically should be, and then take a look at it and try to measure the value of each conference and the football level. We're just talking about football. So the football level of play in each conference, and then maybe move a school or two to help some of the weak spots in the country, but basically keep the geographic sense, and then come up with a revenue distribution plan that would both reward the schools that generate the money, but also evenly distribute the money. So if Alabama produces $100 million and Oregon State produces $10 million, I think it's fair to say we need Oregon State, and they can't operate on $10 million anywhere close to Alabama's $100 million, but we're not going to completely share that down the middle. We're not going to say, okay, it's 110, they both get 55, but you bring it back to center. You say there's a revenue distribution split of 70-30 or 60-40 or something like that. to say we're going to reward the schools that generate the money and the conferences, but we're also going to share with the masses to, again, make the sport healthy and thrive and succeed everywhere.
Okay, well let me throw this at you and see what you think. And this could be, a stupid idea. You tell me. What if we had some sort of a policy that went across the conferences as a stand, where you have to, or have somebody who is in charge of scheduling, because I think one of the big problems is in college football now is scheduling, because you have schools doing it on their own. You're gonna have Alabama doing the home series with Texas. But I think if we had like some of these games where they were big games like that, to where maybe they can split some of the revenue with the other schools, and make it to where teams that are not necessarily the haves of college football, but they're not bad, like Oklahoma State, and you can put them in an interesting matchup with a team who they're going to be most competitive with. That'll be a game that the whole country wants to see. I mean, am I making sense of what I'm trying to say, or is that just...
Sure. Basically, what you're trying to say is the same thing that I've said a million times, that we should take scheduling out of the hands of the individual teams and have a committee that schedules the games.
Yeah,
and the committee would schedule the games based on metrics to make them fair and equal schedules.
And I don't know if this is possible due to geographical and time zones, but if I had it my way, there would be no 11 a.m. kickoffs.
Okay.
Because I don't know. Maybe it's just a personal gripe, because if you're going to have a cookout for the game, and you're having to start the games at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that's not going to fly, Hunter. That's not going to fly with TV. Then you're eliminating the entire Big 12. You're eliminating half the SEC and saying you will never play a noon game Eastern time.
Yeah, I know it's a selfish request.
And half the Big 10.
Yeah.
All right, Hunter. Well, I'm going to move along.
All right. Talk to you later.
Appreciate it. All right, let's take these two final calls, and we will wrap it up here. DeAndre.
Hey, Mark, I ain't going to keep you long. So I got a question for you. What would you consider to be the major bowls? Like, throughout I think we're a few years apart, but I was thinking maybe the Fiesta, Cotton Bowl at some point, Orange Bowl, Rose Bowl, of course, Sugar Bowl, correct? About those five or six?
Okay. Are you talking about all time, or are you talking about right this second?
All time.
Okay. All time, I think you nailed it. Now, right this second, they've elevated the Peach Bowl to a New Year's Six Bowl. But all time, all the ones that you just listed.
Okay. So my question to you, 1968 to 1993, Penn State was independent, correct?
Yes.
So I would say they played in 14 major bowls?
That's what you're telling me. That sounds right.
Okay. So that's about 24 years maybe? And then 25 years, correct? Probably around.
26 seasons. Yeah.
26 seasons. So since they joined the Big Ten, that's been 28 years, correct?
Yeah, 93 was their first year in the Big Ten.
So they only been to 7 major bowls?
Sounds about right. I'd have to go through every year, but I could count them up. Sounds right.
Okay. So my question is, Penn State's been more hurt by joining the Big Ten than by being a part of it.
Well, it depends what your bar of success is. If your bar of success is winning a lot of games and going to major bowl games, you're right. If your bar is making money, then joining the Big Ten has been a benefit to Penn State.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Arkansas Razorbacks, Felix Jones, and Darren McFadden when they were there.
Yep.
They weren't playing the SEC. Would they have been a better program? I mean, would they have won? Not won a national championship, but they would have been pretty good, correct? Outside of that.
Well, they played in an SEC
Right.
championship game against Florida, who then won the national championship. But they also that season, I think, lost to USC like 50-14.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Which
I
I know
was
it's
just
only
asking.
one game,
Yeah.
but 50-14. So they were
Yeah,
good.
USC.
They were good. They lost to Arkansas in a bowl game, or Wisconsin in a bowl game. They were good. They were top 10 to 12 good.
So what about Texas A&M? If they would have stayed in the Big 12, you don't think they would have had a better
Well, if Texas A&M could have stayed in the Big 12 and accomplished everything they have off the field, recruiting, money, resources, all that business that they have since they've joined the SEC, if they could have accomplished all that in the Big 12, they would right now be the best program in the Big 12 with Oklahoma leaving.
Right.
But we don't know if they would have done all that had they not had an SEC patch on their sleeve.
What have they done? I mean, they're doing the same thing.
Well, what I'm not saying they've accomplished anything on the field, but they've built up their program to be able to recruit at a ridiculously high level, and they're making a lot of money. But yeah, you're right. They haven't done anything on the field yet.
Yeah. I was about it.
They had a top 5 team in 2020.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you about this. Dang it. Syracuse. I was looking at Syracuse. I'm not trying to be funny, but when I was coming up, I remember Syracuse being a really good program. But after that, I don't think they were. Before that, after Jim Brown, I can't remember the other running back that went to the Browns who passed away. I can't remember the top of my head.
Ernie Davis.
But there was a really good program. What turned their program around in the 80s to be a really top 10, top 15 program? And what caused it a fall? I'm thinking the fall was caused by, you'll be shocked when I say this, but Connecticut. That's what I think what caused it a fall, because Connecticut was doing decent. I think Connecticut took some of their talent inside the state of Connecticut. Because I think Freely's from there and a couple other guys.
Yeah.
Top of my head. But that's what I was going to ask you about.
Well, maybe the combination of Connecticut and Boston College. That's when Boston College had some of its better teams in the early to mid 2000s. After Donovan McNabb left Syracuse, that's when they dropped off.
Okay. Well, what caused it to ride? Was it McFadden and the way he ran, that other type of offense that he ran, or?
Oh, Don McPherson?
Don McPherson, yeah.
Yeah, so they had that great season in '87 when they tied Auburn in the Sugar Bowl.
Right.
And yeah, I really can't tell you why Syracuse football was as good as it was in the late 80s, early 90s, because then Paul Pasqualoni took over and they were still really good for a couple of years more. Yeah, they had really good teams. Yeah, I just, besides hiring good head coaches.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I was like, I would have thought, I would have looked at their record in the 70s and early 80s. They weren't that good, and I was kind of shocked about that. But I know you've been on for a while, so I'm going to let you go. And I'll catch you later, Mark.
Thanks, DeAndre. Appreciate it.
All right.
Going to take on our last call of the night, coming in from One Scoop John's here.
What's up, Mark?
Finish us off in fine fashion here.
Yeah, I'm going to do 2 minutes on Patreon, and then we're probably going to go eat dinner.
Tremendous.
Yeah, everybody's been bringing the heat today. I've greatly enjoyed it. So hopefully we keep that going. Lots of ratings and everything else. So listen, folks, if you haven't yet joined the Patreon, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to patreon.com and you're going to search MarkRogersTV, or there's usually a link in the description. Okay, here's why you should do it, and it's the best $5 you're going to spend all month, is because number one, we have hangouts almost every night with people way smarter than me in college football. Mark even shows up from time to time. It's a party. We've got the Discord where we're talking all day long, every day about football. And even soon, if you like betting, Mark is going to help you with your betting. And he's going to bring himself, and he's going to bring some other people. And if you like to do the betting, then you're going to have a guide on how to do that. You might even make some money. Who knows? I mean, what else are you going to spend that $5 on? A latte? Come on. So I will fund your first month if somebody wants to try it out. I will fund your first month of subscription. I'll Venmo you $5, but you've got to actually sign up if you're going to take the money. But that's all for me.
Well, that's phenomenal, John. Thank you so much for that. I hope you're having a great day. And yeah, absolutely. Everything that John just said. So you got two things there on Discord. So they pull together these kind of after show parties where we talk college football just like we are right now, with as many as 5, 6, 8 people. And I don't know what the deal is if we get the right sign up, we can have as many people as possible. Correct? So if it's
Yeah, if
my
you have the
sign up
right
or
StreamYard,
Tim's,
yeah.
I think since I've got a paid account and Tim does, if we've got one of those two, and anytime you guys need my sign up, I will give it to you because we want to be able to have as many people in as possible. And yes, I would actually like to stop by a lot more than I do, but it's either I'm toast at that point of the night, or I need to produce more videos, because I would like to produce and post one video on this channel every day, and I don't get to it because I'm doing all the other team channels.
Right.
But anyway, yes. And then you can just talk college football, like in the live chat all the time as well. So you can talk it out of your mouth. You can also just chat like in a chat room, and we've got divided the various chat rooms by conference, and we will add chat rooms if the supply and the demand is there. If the demand is there, we will supply. If John wants to start a Michigan recruiting chat and people want to talk about suit, we have an endless supply of channels that we can start. And when I say channels, maybe people are confused by that. Chat rooms onto the Discord. So go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, as John is letting you know, and I will get you the Discord link. And my predictions are coming your way in about 4 weeks. And I also have the offer of an exclusive live stream every month.
Yeah, and he even listens to feedback and advice. I said let's add one, like a random chat area, and he added it, and now we have a random chat area as well as all the football chat everywhere else. So join up, and just it's a real community. It's really growing.
Cool. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go hit up some food trucks now.
Very cool. I'm right behind you, actually. Famished. All right, John.
Bye.
Appreciate you. Thanks. That was a great way to close it down today. Everybody head on over to Patreon. Check out the banner below. Join our Discord, and we will see you then. In the meantime, I might come on late tonight. I've got some plans tonight. Maybe I come on late tonight. We shall see, because I've got a long day ahead of me tomorrow. Various painting and landscaping in the works. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you soon, and appreciate all that you do here. See you next time.